Hey, droid!
What do you want?
What's your name?
There are some who call me SM-33.
Well, SM-33, I have some bad news. I killed your captain.
Most unlikely. You seem ill-favored for combat.
But it's true. I stabbed him right in the guts and threw him into space. Which makes me your new captain. Right?
What am I to do with these stowaways? Captain.
Hey, no fair! I wanted to be the captain!
As crew, you may challenge the captain to a battle to the death.
No, that's okay. Now, SM-33. Show me how to fly my ship.
Welcome, Masters and Padawans, to episode 567 of Full of Sith. It's me, Bryan Young, and with me as ever, the delightful Holly Frey. Holly, how's your day going?
It's great. How about you?
I'm really excited for today's episode.
Me too, also.
So we get to talk about Skeleton Crew, which I'm beyond excited to talk about.
Oh, me too.
So Skeleton Crew obviously is the new show starting right now as you're listening to this. So hopefully you've watched the first 2 episodes already, or if you're on the fence about it, you're listening to us to find some measure of enthusiasm about why you should be watching it. But obviously we're going to be going into spoilers about it. Holly and I have seen the first 3 episodes of the show.
Yeah.
But we're not going to get into spoilers about the 3rd episode.
Right, because that's next week.
Yeah. And just to clear things up, Holly and I were not paid anything for enjoying the show. We received no swag. We received...
Yeah, I didn't get any swag.
Yeah, no swag, nothing. We just got access to watch the show early. And
I've made my own swag already, but that's a different matter.
Yeah, that's a totally different thing. So this is an unvarnished opinion. As unbiased, I think, as we can be, as far as that goes. But just to say up front, though, like, there isn't any such thing as an unbiased opinion.
No. Like, everybody brings their own baggage to everything they experience, whether they want to or not.
Yeah, we all see things through our own lenses, and even when we're doing our best to try to be objective, there is no such thing as an objective viewpoint. The society, the culture, the way we're raised, our viewpoints that we hold from very young ages, all of those things affect what we perceive as objective. So we'll do our best to, remain neutral. I don't know why I'm going into this, because there isn't really any neutrality here. I think we both just really liked this show.
We did, and here's what I will say up front. I try to never have expectations of anything, because I feel like that's the seat of a lot of people's dismay or malcontent or disappointment with whatever they consume, media or otherwise. But I, like many other people, was already kind of in love with Neel and just thought he was adorable, as has been apparent on this show before. But I'm always a little trepidatious about kids and kid actors, not even through their own fault, but often they're played and edited in ways that are a little too sugary for me. So I was a little fearful. Listen, that just all fell away. And Neel is exactly as delightful as I had hoped. Perhaps more
Yeah.
so.
No, I think there's always a little bit of a concern going into a new Star Wars thing, going like, is this the thing that's going to make me go like, I'm done.
I mean, I don't think there's ever anything that's going to make me go, ugh, I'm done, because there's always so much other stuff I love.
Yeah,
But
no, that's definitely true. I guess I worry. I see so many people do that I always worry that it's going to happen to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's that.
I
Like,
do.
well, it's happened to so many other people. Like, what if this is that thing for me?
I don't think there will be for either of us.
I don't think there will be either, but there is that like.
You
concern.
never know. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I'm a very worried person generally.
Me too. Anxiety is my co-pilot. And that's fine, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in relation to this show.
So the Skeleton Crew, for those of you who don't know, or who have, like me, kind of stayed away from a lot of the advertising. Like, I watched the teasers at Celebrations, and I watched like the trailer once, right? It does have that Goonies sort of feel. It's set in the days of the New Republic, and it's about it's set out in the middle of the Outer Rim in the far reaches of space, and the New Republic is doing its best to sort of keep its hold on policing these parts of the galaxy, but it's not great at it. And
they have a pirate problem.
They have a pirate problem.
We give away nothing. This is the opening intro text.
Yeah. And it's about 4 kids living on a very peaceful planet in the midst of all of this that find a spaceship, accidentally activate it, and end up in the midst of this pirate problem.
Yeah.
It gets a lot more complicated than that. And we'll talk about a lot of that, but I think that's pretty much the gist of the show.
Yeah.
The feel of the show is very Amblin Entertainment. I think if you go back and you look at E.T., it has so many touchstones to E.T. and even Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It has so many touchstones to Goonies, especially with the pirates. It has so many touchstones to like that classic swashbuckling sort of storytelling. And it's a very sweet show. Like, yes, there's peril, yes, there's tension, but it's a very innocent sort of show. And I was telling Patty, my wife, like, if there's like this pendulum swing of like what Star Wars is capable of, and on one side of the pendulum, on the extremes, you've got this gritty, soulful, like political take like Andor on one side, and then you've got this very sweet, adventurous kids stuff in live action on the other side. You've got Skeleton Crew.
Yes.
It's pretty much the opposite of Andor, but still reaching. It's still reaching those levels of greatness, I think.
Oh yeah, it's very, very. Listen, the story is very familiar. Bryan referenced swashbuckling. It very much is referencing a classic pirate story, which is Treasure Island.
Yeah.
But it also feels incredibly fresh, despite you being like, oh, this is where that character clicks into that kind of story. I know they have mentioned many, many times on like the press junket, the word joy has been brought up, but it's so accurate. It just feels very joyful and very sweet. But as I said, it doesn't feel to me like saccharine at all. The kids are spectacular.
Yeah.
Like, they're all very good.
They really are.
I didn't think I would be, I mean, as I've said, I'm not a big kids person. Listen, nothing against kids. The failing is mine. But I just don't connect to kids all that well, usually in narrative. And I really, really, I love the kids in this story. And I found myself, I think I'm Fern in some ways, particularly when dealing with a whim who is an impulsive dreamer.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm
can
like,
see that.
stop doing what you're doing. We actually have to get stuff done.
I want to call out how impressive a lot of the storytelling was.
Oh,
I really, really love how John Watts took so many familiar moves, not just from the Spielberg, but like he's going back to the George Lucas stuff too. Like,
oh yeah.
I'm sure you noticed, but he's turning it on its ear and taking the familiar things and and giving them new meaning, right? Like the opening, it opens with the opening text that kind of acclimates you to when and where this is in the universe, and it has that familiar pan down. And it has this sort of desert planet down on the bottom, but like where in A New Hope we see, you know, the moon on the left side, we get it on the right side. And then you see this, you know, Alderanian sort of Corvette style ship enter the frame just like Leia's, and you're sort of expecting it to pass by and then a bigger ship come by, right? Like that's the expectation because that's what these shots look like. And then all of a sudden the pirate ship comes in with these giant drill cannons that pierce the side of the ship, and it's almost like a jump scare where it's like, oh, these are pirates. This is not going to be like what we expected.
No,
right?
It's very interesting because there are so many very strong and pretty obvious. I mean, it's not like they're trying to be cloak and daggery about it. References and echoes of A New Hope. But as you said, like they all twist in such a way that while they feel very familiar, you don't know what's coming next, which is really fun.
But they're also telling a story too. Like you look at A New Hope where the good guys, right, like the Alderanians are running around, the rebels are running around, and they're all wearing blue, and they're gathering around these white hallways, and they're getting ready to fight the Empire. And then the Empire blows through, and they're all wearing masks, and they're all imposing, and they're ready to fire back. And here you've got all of the cargo crew who are all wearing earth tones. And then
it's a very dark shot.
And it's a very dark shot, right? And then you've got the pirates come through, and they're all mostly aliens, but they're all wearing similar earth tones. And they don't have to break in; they just kind of walk in through their forced entry points. And the only person in a mask is the captain, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, there's a lot more shades of gray. Like there's a lot of ambiguity here between these cargo ship captains and these pirates, and we're going to get into this ambiguity and who we can trust and who we can't. And it's just in the color palette and the costumes and the characters that they're telling that as a contrast to the very black and white color palette of A New Hope. And then they show us, like, they subvert our expectations even further when Silvio, the captain there, starts choking the captain of the cargo ship, and his dialogue starts reflecting Vader's, right? And he talks about, like, if this is a cargo ship, why is your, you know, if you don't have any cargo, why is your vault magnetically sealed or whatever? And then they open it. They open it, and then there's just a single credit there. And Vader, when Vader goes aboard and does this same thing with Captain Antilles, and the plans aren't there, just like Antilles told him, when the stormtroopers find this failure, Vader just starts giving plans, and they turn on a dime, and they start listening to Vader, and they redirect their plan. And you almost expect that. Silvio doesn't command that kind of respect, though. So instead of them redirecting their plan for the next way to get the treasure, they mutiny.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, so it takes all of these story beats, it takes all of these familiar moments from A New Hope, and even before the opening... Even before the opening starts, we're shown like how different everything is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just really well done.
Yeah, it very much feels like, oh yes, we're in Star Wars, but you don't you can't anticipate all the things you think you can. It's really, really lovely. And also just like fun.
Yeah.
It's high action right out of the gate, which I like. And then we go to At-Atten.
Yeah,
Everything's a little more serene.
It really does look like, if you look at like Wim's house, it's the perfect suburban house up on the hill that you wished you live in, and it does look like Elliot's house kind of up on the hill in that suburbia in E.T. Not, I mean, like location wise, like
Right.
I don't know.
I'm like, I don't remember Elliot having a great house. He had a single mom and they were struggling. But I see what you mean. Like there's an idyllic nature to it.
There's
an
idyllic nature, and it is situated up at that cul-de-sac, up at that top of the hill.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, it does have the single dad situation,
It does.
right?
Also, I don't know if we've talked about it here, but why is Wim's dad so cute? I wasn't ready for it. I was not ready for Wim to have a handsome dad. That's neither here nor there.
I kind of struggled with Wim's dad, though, because it was like, Wim's dad, like...
He's dadding.
He doesn't have a lot of affection for his son.
No.
And, like... there was a couple times where I was like, just hug your kid, damn it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, right? It's a good sort of, I'm sure they're not intending this to be this heavy-handed, but particularly in the time we're living in now, I know that I can get very, I think a lot of people can, I can get very wrapped up in like what I'm doing and work and whatnot, and it's easy to let that pragmatism and that like checklist of life drive the bus, and his dad has clearly lost his ability. He doesn't come off as evil in any way. He just can't, he's got like the focus blinders on where he can't see the sum total of his life and all that it encompasses, including having this really interesting, very creative minded kid. He's just trying to do his job, and that's kind of like become his focus.
And I would bet there's going to be that moment at the end of the series when he probably gets his kid back, where they do embrace and they have that moment where he apologizes and says he's going to focus on his kid more, and they're building that, and the contrast is going to be a lot greater because of this. But there were a couple moments where I'm like really identifying with him, where his kid is getting in trouble at school and he comes to do that and he's like, okay, I've got to go back to work, and it's like, I've had to go pick up my kid in trouble for school like that, and the kids are just really anxious, and it's like, oh man, I know what the kid feels like in that situation, and they just need a hug, right? And it's like, you can take the time to just hug your kid, man.
Also, this world is an alien paradise for Holly Frey. The cute little Rhodian girls that get on the bus with Wim and Neel in their little school uniform skirts, dying. It's the cutest thing I've ever seen. Obsessed.
Runa was also adorable, and Neel's crush on Runa was also adorable.
Oh, it's the cutest thing. And the fun thing is, it reads instantly. Like the first shot of that classroom, you can tell he's just obsessed with her.
Oh yeah.
He's just gazing wistfully at her. It's like it's so obvious, but also so charming. This is also where we get introduced to this idea of the great work in the classroom, and that line, "We all have a place in the great work," that Undersecretary Farah says.
Yeah.
Is so ominous. It's so completely milquetoast and benign, but also ominous at the same time.
So there's something really weird. Like, the first time I watched this episode, there was something that felt super off about that, and it reminded me of, like, all of this leading up to that moment. It reminded me of Lois Lowry's The Giver. Right? I don't know if you're familiar with that book.
I don't think I have read it.
But it is a very dystopian book where it's like The Giver is this story where, like, everyone in the society, it is a very perfect society, at least from the beginning, where everyone takes a test and they're all very perfect, and then everyone has a job and an assignment, and it's about this kid who gets assigned to be the giver. Well, he gets assigned to be the receiver, but basically, like, everyone's happy and great, but one person is assigned in their society to basically take all the memories of bad things and horrible things and all the feelings that they have for all these horrible things and hold them collectively for the society so they don't have to remember them. But nobody really knows how awful that is because they don't know about it. Only this one guy does. And it's this really weird, creepy book. And as the kid learns about it, he's like, no, we have to break this system because there's so many beautiful things that people don't know about because of this also. Like, it's a very black and white society. Literally, they can't see color anymore because that arouses them too much. They don't have love because, so it's very, very creepy. But, like, that was one thing that struck me as unusual about this, where it's this place that's painted as a utopia, but it's really this horrible dystopia. But also Wim's, like, knowledge and interest of the Jedi. Right? We're in the New Republic, and the Empire had smashed out all of this knowledge of the Jedi, and the Clone Wars had turned people against the Jedi so thoroughly that knowledge of them and discussion of them was not done in the open. And here he is, and he's got this, like, storybook tablet with stories of the Jedi and openly playing with lightsabers and intimate knowledge of Jedi temples and how they might operate as myths, where later, with Rey, she thinks Luke Skywalker even is a myth. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it feels like between that, and we'll talk later, I'm sure, about the barrier and the great work and his knowledge of the Jedi, and the Republic Dactaries that he's given, which is the same currency that Qui-Gon tries to pay for the hyperdrive.
Yeah.
I began to suspect very quickly something fishy was up about At-Aden.
Yes. Yeah. I will also just give a shout out that I am obsessed with, like, the mid-century modern design of all of it. Like, it's like mid-century modern, the way it envisioned the future.
Yeah, no, Doug Chang and his co-conspirator on the production design on this really knocked it out of the park.
Delicious.
And it's like, it's a place I'd want to live, especially with all of the public transit options and the lack of, like, traffic, and the fact that I don't know if you noticed on the streets, everything is tracked. So like, everything's essentially a train. Except for the speeders.
Which gets us into Fern.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm like, Fern is a menace. She's not careful. This is actually interesting because she is a daredevil, but she also, as these first two episodes play out, is very frustrated by Wim's lack of forethought, which is an interesting dichotomy for her character to inhabit, because she's not a careful person either. It's just her version of not careful and his are different. And I am so old that I winced when Wim is on his little speeder bike and his helmet fell off. I was like, ooh, I'm like an old person now. I'm like, oh no, the helmet's gone.
I loved the little streamers on his handlebars,
Oh,
though.
they're precious. They're precious. I also liked the completely unnecessary Indiana Jones style roll into the garage. Totally unnecessary, totally adorable.
Can we pause for a second for the completely amazing and possibly unnecessary, but still, in my adoring heart, perfect American Graffiti references?
Yes, they're everywhere.
So like, I mean, the biggest one is obviously the young Ben Solo lookalike Bonj Falfa character.
Yeah.
Who shows up to challenge Fern to a race, which is obviously like a reference, a very deep reference to Bob Falfa, who was the Harrison Ford character in American Graffiti who kept challenging John Milner to a race.
Yeah.
And that's the climax that played out in American Graffiti. And I find it funny, too, that story in American Graffiti actually inspired Back to the Future 2 and 3 also.
Yeah.
Which is Flea's character in Back to the Future 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Was
Which
an
then
inspiration.
gets referenced in Solo.
Yeah.
And kind of visually here.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if Bonj Falfa is going to show up again at the end of the series. And she's going to have to race and learn some lesson about how she used to be after this journey changes her. And that's going to be present with Bonj somehow.
Probably.
Yeah. Just like with Marty, right? With Marty, it was like that was what ruined his life, was getting called a chicken and deciding to race needles and crashing his 4x4.
Right.
But learning his lesson over the course of his journey through Biff Tannen's Donald Trump timeline, and then coming back and not racing him and not breaking his hand and being able to be successful, and having learned his lesson and not crashing into that Rolls Royce. So I think Fern's got some work to do there.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, all the racing, all of that need for speed comes out of American Graffiti. And even that sequence in the forest where he loses his helmet is sort of like, you can trace that back to American Graffiti, because George Lucas getting into the racing in American Graffiti was his interest in racing and his interest in speed. And then he built that up in A New Hope with the trench run, because he was like, how can I make things feel like they're going faster on film?
Right.
And then he doubled down on that with the forest, speeder chase in Return of the Jedi. And that's very clearly shot for shot in some ways what they're referencing in Skeleton Crew, with Wim roaming through the forest, finding the, Jedi temple he thinks he's finding.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen.
I love American Graffiti, Holly.
I love it. I don't love it as much as you. I don't dislike it at all. You're more obsessed with it than I am, which is not a cut in any way. However, you know what I am obsessed with?
Neel?
The Star Wars Holiday Special.
Yeah. I know.
And the fact that we get like a weird little reference to it in this.
Oh, I laughed so hard when I saw that.
The hooting and hollering that went on at my house. And then that is followed by one of the funniest shots I've ever seen in a Star Wars.
Just Neel in a
bubble bath.
I think it's easy to say
I can't stop laughing.
That's the first bubble bath in Star Wars, right? I like how,
so funny.
I like how I love the cut out of that too, where like the conversation doesn't even stop, where he's like startled in the bubble bath, and then it just kind of cuts to like them pulling open the garage.
Yeah.
Like the conversation never stopped.
Yes. I love that this show does that a lot, where it's like there's also that moment where Wim is stuck in the ravine and the security droid finds him and is like, you know, I don't remember exactly what the wording is, but it's basically like, you know, return to me immediately or whatever. And he's like, how? And they don't show you how, but he clearly gets dragged out of that ravine somehow. And there's a lot of those where it's like you get enough left to your imagination that the fill-in is almost as delightful as anything they could have shown you on screen, right? You just imagine like Wim getting either plucked out by a droid or having some sort of, you know, repelling apparatus drop down to him and the droid reeling him in. Any of it is funny.
Oh, speaking of repelling, that was, I think, one of the funniest gags in the entire show. When he hands Neel the rope and goes,
oh my
hold
God,
this, I'm going to go down. And Neel does nothing with the rope. And
he just skids on his tummy
and drags Neel down with him, as though like Neel was just going to hold the rope. And he's just like, you're too heavy. You've got too many bones.
Yeah.
Like,
also,
they're too heavy, I think is what he says.
In the weird and wonderful shots, did you happen to notice when they're leaving Neel's garage, I think it's Neel's garage, there is on the wall, like it looks like the garages of everyone that grew up in the 70s, like that your dad had. There is a picture of what looks like whatever species Neel is, but like it's a beer frau. Like it's
yeah. And I'm wondering how long it is until Tom Spina produces one of those.
I can't wait. I will buy it immediately, and I don't know where I'll put it, but somewhere in my house, because I love the beer frau.
I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Spina made that thing.
I wouldn't either. We can always ask him. Yeah. I love it so much. I love it so much that even though I was kind of like having to watch these pretty quickly one after another, I stopped and went back to look at it.
Yeah.
That's very much in my wheelhouse of hilarious, weird background stuff. We have not talked about the lighting in this show, and it's very, very obvious in the flashlight scene how good it is, right?
Yeah.
Like they're using exclusively that light that's available through the flashlights. But it made me think then about the way the whole show, that as far as we've seen it, has been lit, and it's really good. Like the lighting tells so much of the story in terms of how, like, we've already talked about, you know, kind of the idyllic neighborhoods, but every shot of them looks like that beautiful golden hour.
Yeah.
And it's inherently like, you know, makes you feel warm and safe. And similarly, when we get to some dangerous places we'll talk about in a bit, like the lighting is very ominous and moody. And then this moment where they are in this ship after they dig it out also sets up the great thing of Fern and KB versus Wim and Neel, each thinking the other two are the idiots, which is very funny to me. Them walking around in this space lit only by flashlights, it's like, this is the moment where they don't even, it's like a great metaphor for like that late stage of childhood where you're about to be, you know, more wizened as a teenager or whatever, where like you don't quite know what you're looking for in the world, but you're curious about things and you want to find things, and you feel in the dark a lot of the time. Like that's what that whole scene feels like to me, and I loved it for that.
Yeah. Well, and I loved, there's so much of the other lighting, and so much of it feels like it comes from that Spielberg stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, especially the moments where the dad is running after them in the forest as the ship is taking off. It feels like the sequences where E.T.'s running after his ship.
That is some E.T. lighting for sure.
And the ship taking off feels very much like the ship in Close Encounters leaving.
Yeah.
Like they definitely went to those color stories and those lighting schemes in those Spielberg movies to really evoke those same sorts of feelings. And it's beautiful stuff. It really is. And there's moments where they tell stories with the color as well, like the moment when SM-33 sort of wakes up and comes at them the first time, where they're like, what is that noise? What's going on? And you kind of see the one eye pop up, but then the flash of light comes out and puts him in silhouette, and it is that jump scare for the kids.
Yeah.
It's so just really well wrought. And can we talk about the little rat that's part of SM-33?
I'm obsessed. I want a plush one immediately.
But like, I didn't think, like, I don't know how they do it, but like every time they take a bite of the apple, where it's like, how in the world are they going to make a droid better than the last one, or that's as good as the last one, or that's going to join the canon of all the cool droids, and how are they going to make this one stand apart from the others? And I was like, you know, Chopper, Bucket,
Right.
you know, like K2SO, you know, Pym.
33
Or
has a rat
Pip,
living in its
Pip.
head.
Yeah, like, so they're like, okay, we're going to make this pirate who kind of walks like he's got a peg leg, and he's going to be this really old-ass droid, and he's going to have a rat living in one of his eyes. And the rat is going to be central to him. It's not going to, like, leave. It's just going to pop out when it's weird.
Right. We had seen the rat in some piece of promo footage. And I remember thinking, oh, like, that's cute. It'll be like a jump scare. No, he's part of the character.
Yeah.
And then
Nick
Neel
Frost-
befriends him, which makes me love Neel even more.
Yeah, no, and there's some good business in the third episode with him that I want to talk about, but we'll talk about a different time. Just,
Yeah, for sure.
the rat is super important. Yeah, no, SM-33 is just terrific. Yeah.
I don't
No,
I
they
don't
did
think
it.
the
Like, they
thing that
created
you want to
another
talk
iconic
about
droid.
I don't think the thing that you want to talk about is in episode 3. I think it's in 2. I'm looking at my notes. I think it's in 2 because I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I think you might be right.
Yeah. But I want to talk about the end of episode 1 before we move into 2 more actively.
Okay.
Stars.
Oh, yeah. That was another one of those things that tipped me off that there was something very wrong about this planet.
Oh, yeah. Like, what a weird thing for kids to not know what stars look like.
Yeah.
And us, we don't know what the barrier is exactly. I have theories about the planet. But it was a little bit heartbreaking to see all the kids be like, what are those? And Fern go, I think those are stars. That was amazing.
I loved, though, but how that tender, sad moment transitions into the ship going into hyperspace and them all just screaming, and then getting the close-ups of them all screaming, and then the episode just ending.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
And then I loved how the next episode just opens the exact same way, with them just close-ups, like in exact reverse of them all screaming.
Yeah. And we are fully into pirate everything in episode 2.
Oh, yeah. And it is so Pirates of the Caribbean.
So much. And we get... Is this the first... No, surely not. Is this the first time we've seen somebody puke in Star Wars? I don't remember, but I was like, whoa, they're going there.
I don't know. I don't know, but Port Borgo is very much Port Royal from
yes.
the ride.
Oh, yes.
like 100%. Like they are leaning into the ride a lot.
Yes, a whole lot. This episode featured, I don't know why, another one of my favorite Neel moments.
Which one was this?
I don't talk with my trunk.
Oh yeah. This also brought back Teak from the Ewok adventure, which actually
the wee ferryman.
Yeah, the wee ferryman. He actually brought back to a memory, like, this feels very much what it felt like as a kid. Like, this captured the feeling, but with way more production value and skill of storytelling, what it was like as a kid watching the Ewok adventures.
Oh yeah, I think that's a fair. I mean, I was a little older than you, so not quite as tiny, but I think I would still agree.
Like, I was like 5 and 6 when those came out, and it was just like I was watching kids. I mean, Sindel seemed like 6 or 7 when those were like in those, and so it was like I'm just watching kids that were my age and a little bit older or a little bit older than me having adventures in Star Wars, and this kind of feels like it recaptures a little bit of that vibe.
Yeah.
And I still, like, when I go back and watch those Ewok adventures, I kind of feel that, like, I kind of feel the echoes of that, and this tapped into that really hard. And there was something about seeing Teak walk out as the wee ferryman that really magnified that a lot and made me go like, oh, well, like, it almost made me dizzy a little bit, going like, oh wow, that's what they're tapping into, and that's what this is, but on a scale that the whole family can enjoy. And I think part of that is because of how much kids entertainment has changed over the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And Teak just, like, hit me between the eyes with it, seeing him there.
It was it's almost shocking, and here's why. At least for me. You know, we've been teased with some of these things that were going to come up in this show. And some instances of, you know, people being like, oh, there's going to be a Teak species character. And I don't know why, this could just be me, but I was almost expecting, like, a ta-da, like, here's the thing we told you was coming. But I mean, he's just in it suddenly. There's no, like, here's the frame up, here's the pan, here's the music swell. Suddenly there's just a Teak ferryman involved, which I love, because it just makes it feel more alive and more real that way. But it made me giggle.
Yeah. Especially his reaction when he gets those dictaries.
Right? Oh, he's excited. He's excited about money.
He runs off like Teak.
Listen, did they tease me with a space bar that we never go into? Yes. Cruel. Rude.
Well, they're children.
Yeah, but I'm not. I want to see inside.
I liked that too, how the woman on the outside is just like, are you guys really children?
Right? Well, and it's one of those things where, because we know that this is a dangerous place, and because 33 is like, trust no one, you know, any interaction like that the kids have, we're having the same mental, like, contortions that they are, of like, is this person for real? Is she actually trying to help us? Is she trying to kidnap them? Like, I still don't know. She seemed really genuine, but she might be a kidnapper. I can't tell.
Do you think SM-33, in the context of, like, Port Borgo feeling like Port Royal and the whole New Orleans Square part of Disneyland, is a reference to Club 33?
I wonder, for sure. I mean, obviously, right, his name smells me. But I did wonder for sure if that is a convenient crossover of the two.
Yeah.
And
I don't know. It feels like there's so much there that's Pirates of the Caribbean and Disneyland.
Yeah. Oh yes. Oh yes. Space tattoos.
I love that. It was really funny. I was watching with Kingston, and we've been playing so much Outlaws, and that's very much the Hutt cartel symbol.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was just so excited, like, that guy's a Hutt. Like, that guy works for the Hutts.
Yes. I also love that the droid doing the tattoos is covered in tattoos.
Yeah.
That's just such a fun listen. If you
Was that
Yes.
Seth Green doing the voice of that droid?
Oh, I don't know.
I looked in the credits and couldn't find it, but it sounded like him.
Yeah, I wasn't sure either. I just thought I was marveling because if you, like me, get tattoos on the regular, you know that most tattoo artists are covered in tattoos. So it was like a nice, very funny, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a very nice real world nod. I love it. A space tattoo. See, now there's actually part of my brain that's like, I need a Hutt cartel tattoo, but one that looks like it got messed up halfway through. And then we get to Neel befriending the rat.
Yeah.
Which, again, I say, plush rat, please.
Yeah.
And then we get to the thing I think you really wanted to talk about, which was very Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, yeah. No, that he's trying to, convince the rat, just like the moment in Pirates of the Caribbean where they're trying to convince the dog to go get the key hanging on the hook for them while they're in prison.
Yep.
And yeah, it's just such a funny, great moment.
Yeah. This show is so much fun.
But there's a lot of lead up to that as well too, where they're trying to get off of Port Borgo because they realize that they keep telling everyone where they're from because everybody's like, well, where are you from? Because the credits are a tip-off because everybody's like, where the hell did you get these old Republic credits?
Right.
In such fine condition. And
right.
It's like, Neil's like, his dad gave him to him for lunch money. And they're like, what the hell are you? Which would be like...
I love how Neel and Wim, to a degree, have just zero savvy. Just none whatsoever.
Oh, yeah. And Fern has all of it.
Yes.
And they just don't, they're not grokking how much of a big deal this is. And all the other pirates are just like, these guys basically, that would be like us going in and paying for something with gold doubloons from a Spanish galleon.
Right.
And going is this going to be enough? And them going where did you get this? And going oh, my dad gave it to me for lunch money. Yes. What? And because they just don't know better. That's just money at home. And that was one of the things in the close-ups of them showing the money, it had little the old Grand Army of the Republic symbols on it. That. And so it was yeah, something's really wrong with this, and everybody else talking about it being a myth. And it's oh, they really are never going to find their way back. Which was something I was a little bit confused by when they started talking about the show, where they're oh yeah, they find a spaceship and they leave and they get lost and they can't get back home. And it's did they just not remember their address? What? Space travel's pretty easy in Star Wars. And their planet being a myth.
Yeah.
That isn't in any of the star charts actually makes all of that complication make sense.
Yeah.
I
have a theory about it, but I think I want to save the theory until people have seen episode 3.
Yeah, episode 3 sheds a little bit more light, but not a whole lot.
Yeah, but I feel like my theory would ruin some of what's revealed in episode 3, so I don't want to share it just yet. Episode 3 is also very fun. I cannot wait.
Yeah. But it being a myth adds to the whole Treasure Island feel too.
100%. 100%.
And of course you've got pirates going like, holy crap, these kids have pirate treasure and they're from this mythical planet.
They claim to
must
be from a
know.
place we have only been told is imaginary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They must know where it is. They're the X on the map that we only thought, didn't exist. So throw them in the brig. And that's why they're in the prison in the first place. And the show's just so populated with interesting aliens.
I also love that as many cute aliens as we see on at Atten, when they get to the pirate docking camp, Neel's first thing is, look at all these aliens. It's like, you're all aliens, my darling.
Yeah. Well, they're a lot more like grizzly too. Like, I was so shocked. Like, in the first scene, there's that Gran that has like one of his eye stalks cut off and an eye patch, and I'm like, oh, that's actually brutal. Like, it looks cool and it looks very piratey, but it's like the thought of, like, for some reason, the thought of a human losing an eye and wearing an eye patch as a pirate doesn't seem as brutal as a Gran losing an entire eye stalk.
Yeah. Yeah, because it feels more like losing an appendage. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's all scary. Did you notice that there is what appears, I did not get a close look, but what appears to be a Cuso in the background at one point?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, woo, all right, Zuvio.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe it's him in his early days.
Maybe. I mean, I guess it's possible, but we've
They
seen
should
other
make some more
characters wear
action
that
figures.
style of hat. Yeah, we should. Yeah, these first two episodes are so much fun. What an absolute delight of a ride.
I really love Brutus too. I really love that they brought I mean, are they going with? Do you think they're going to go with calling him a Shistavenian Wolfman?
I mean, as much as they don't call any of their. I was trying to remember because I didn't have a chance to go back and rewatch. If they mention any of the species by species, right? Because there's a moment where Neel is talking about his crush, and I can't remember. I don't think he mentions her species at all. We also didn't talk about that hilarious thing when Fern and KB find them digging around the ship portal, and they do the fake security droid voice and ask, who is your crush at school? And Neel just blurts that biz out. He doesn't even.
Yeah, I know. Like, Wim's just like, what? And Neel's just like, Runa, without even hesitating.
Runa! There's so many things to just cackle at in the best way in this show. It's like exactly the fresh air I needed.
I think John Watts and the team that they've assembled, like, really understand the humor of Star Wars and the balance between the humor and the tension.
Yes.
And the humor and the adventure, and they've really leaned into the swashbuckling. They've really leaned into the adventure, and they've really leaned into the situational comedy, where it's not just like quippy one-liners that are funny. Like, some of them are just kids being kids, and it's like that moment with the rope, or
Neel in a bubble bath,
or Neel getting stuck in the vent.
Oh my goodness, so funny.
Where
how did you get down?
Or which leads to the moment where he's like, Jedi 1 to Jedi 2. I found the bridge. Don't tell the girls. And he's stuck in the vent. So the girls have his walkie-talkie, his comlink.
Yeah.
Or, man, the moment where just, I don't know how many times Wim falls somewhere, or the moment you realize the ship is upside down.
Right.
And they're walking on the ceiling, or, the rat. Like, there's so much visual, like, interesting comedy setups that aren't just, I don't know, people. I'm tired of people complaining about Marvel humor as though they created high speed dialogue humor as though Cary Grant was never in His Girl Friday.
Right.
And Billy Wilder never existed.
Yeah.
I hate that they call it that because it is very much that high speed Billy Wilder. It goes even before Billy Wilder, right? Just that 1930s style rapid fire dialogue.
Yeah.
And they do some of that, right? Because that's just funny. I don't know. Maybe they don't like it because they can't process it that quickly and they can't. I'm not saying that as a negative, but it's like the jokes are so rapid fire sometimes that it's hard to keep up. But that always makes rewatchability for me higher because then I can go back and go like, oh man, those jokes were so fast, or those laughs were so fast. I had to go back to be able to catch them all.
Yeah.
Like
they're like comedy Pokemon.
Yeah. But this has it at a bunch of different levels.
Yes, it is so much fun. Oh, delight. Yes.
Oh, I was gonna say something, and I was like, "Did you notice?" And then I realized I think that's a scene from episode 3.
I know. I very, very specifically put all of my episode 3 notes separate so I would not accidentally blurt any of them out.
We didn't talk.
There's a lot of good stuff.
Much about KB though, but she has that artificial intelligence like Lobot situation going.
Yeah.
And I like that she does. I like that she has that, and I like when Fern takes over the ship and decides she's captain because she's the actual one with smarts to go like, this droid's going to kill us if I don't come up with a story about how I murdered the captain and am the captain now.
Oh yeah, there are so many moments in my notes where I just write, hell yeah, Fern. Sometimes with an expletive instead of hell, but you know.
Yeah. And there's something so sweet about her as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and all the kids too, especially when they're like, yeah, no, there's more loyalty to her maybe than I think meets the eye initially. And there's definitely this feeling that there's more to her, mainly with her relationship with her mom, right? Like in that first episode, you can tell that like she's acting out maybe because of expectations her mom puts on her that she doesn't necessarily want or need.
Yeah. You have segued into one of the other things I wanted to mention, which is that, I mean, as is often the case in a piece of media about kids of this age, but it's so deftly handled here, we really get a sense of the duality of childhood at this age, where it's like there is the version of them that their parents believe them to be and need them to be, and then there is the version of them that is who they are when nobody's looking, or when they have, you know, their own agency to just be free. And like, I think for a lot of kids, and a lot of what makes that stage of life and that entry into like young adulthood so fraught is that you're trying to navigate those two things, right? You're trying to not let people down necessarily, but you also want to break free of the sometimes incorrect identities that people have put upon you. And so it's really, really fun to watch this get stretched to the max, because those identities that are their more real selves are what lead them on this wild journey. So when they get home, like, right, for most of us, what that means is like you end up hanging out with people your parents don't like, but in this case they end up far away in space and can't get home. It's a little different. So seeing how that denouement is going to work out and unify those two identities for each of these kids is quite interesting too.
Yeah, no, the writing is really sharp. It's really astute, and I think it really does capture a lot of that cognitive dissonance of childhood. and having them in a situation without adults, or presumably in a situation where they're with an adult that might
not have their best interests at heart.
Yeah. Is going to forge them into learning a lot about themselves, and maybe make some of them, it's going to soften some of them and harden some others, I think.
Yeah. Oh.
No, I think Skeleton Crew is a winner.
I think so too. And we haven't even mentioned that Neel has tiny siblings that are adorable.
And little baby Tulo.
Adorable. I can't cope with it. It's like too much for my heart in the best way.
And I don't know, like, we're recording this before the major, like, most people have seen it. And I have a sneaking suspicion that there's probably going to be a group of people who don't like it. And here's the thing.
Fine.
I don't care.
Don't watch it. Don't watch it. I'm in love with it.
If you don't like it, I kind of don't want to hear about it. Here's the thing. Like, if it's not for you, it's not for you. Like, why do you need to bother other people about it?
Right.
Find a group that doesn't like it, and you can have your private little group to not like it.
Or find something
you don't need to
you
bother
do
people.
like.
Yeah, you don't have to bother people that do like it. If you don't like it, I don't want to hear about it. I would like to hear about something you do like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Can't wait for the rest of it.
So, I've got a couple of emails for us to dive into. I think they're both more statements than questions, and they both relate to our last episode.
Okay.
And then we can end this. So this first one is from Josh. And Josh says, "Hi, Holly and Bryan. First of all, thanks for all the wonderful Star Wars content. I always look forward to hearing you both talk about Star Wars in such a positive way. As we all know, the internet tends to reward negative criticism. It's refreshing to hear some positive takes on all the amazing shows that we're so unbelievably spoiled to have. Anyway, gathered through years of listening to Full of Sith that I could probably assume that the two of you lead toward human decency and bodily autonomy. I know the tendency is to not get political, but I thought the way you related our current situation with Lucas's awareness of politics in the late 90s, early 2000s was exactly it. And obviously Vietnam before that. Thank you for getting political. It's important sometimes. Now seems to be one of those times. And as always, you're both very diplomatic about it. Pointing out that politics play a big role in our lives is necessary. So in solidarity, F the Empire. I can't wait for Andor Season 2. Much love, Josh." And then here's a message from Chris. Chris says, "I just listened to the last show on politics and wanted to share what I see may shed light on how rugged individualists and right-leaning folks can like the saga, particularly Rogue One and the Rebel Cause. Star Wars is a bit of a Rorschach test. The hardcore left and right both see themselves as the rebels fighting against the oppressive regime. To the far right, the Empire and particularly Palpatine represent the shadowy cabal pulling the strings of the U.S. government. There are many conspiracy theories that support this, from the Illuminati to George Soros to reptilian overlords." I can't believe I said that with a straight face, Holly. They are the "don't tread on me" Republicans who feel they're fighting for their freedom, and Donald Trump is an outsider who will be their savior. They're the Joe Rogan crowd. The far left views Donald Trump and the Republicans as the evil empire, hell-bent on taking away their rights and using capitalism to gain more and more power, resulting in the rise of the Sith. This is a perfect example of a certain point of view. How meta is that? Cheers. I enjoy the show and look forward to many more. P.S. In my opinion, I feel that the far left and far right have more in common with each other than they do with the majority in the middle, but that's a topic for another podcast. Thanks, Chris. Any comments on that before we tie it up?
Nah. I mean, I could, but fundamentally it comes down to I don't see how they can see themselves in that way, but that's just me.
Well, they're wearing very, very weird, like, glasses.
Right.
Okay. Well, where can people find you then, Holly?
You can find me on Instagram as SurlyGirly5 and on Blue Sky as me, Holly Frey. Still on Stuff You Missed in History Class and Criminalia. And again, I will say it, Killer Cocktails is out now. It's great for holiday gifting. How about you?
You can find me across social media, mainly at Blue Sky these days, at Swankmotron or at swankmotron.com. If you're looking to do some holiday shopping, you can find signed copies of my books on my website at swankmotron.com, or even if you're looking for like Star Wars cards that I've written, you can find, I'll sign those and send them to you at swankmotron.com. If you're looking for Full of Sith, you can go to the entire back catalog and listen to it at fullofsith.com. Send us emails, and we will read them at the end of every show. We'd love to hear what you think about Skeleton Crew, so send us email at holocron@fullofsith.com, and be sure to rate and review the show wherever it is you listen to it. So until next time, let me know what you think about it. And next week, the 501st telethon is next week, so look out for that. Next weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So
Marvelous.
yeah. So unless you think there's anything else, Holly.
Nope, we're good.
Okay. So I hope everyone enjoys Skeleton Crew, and if you don't, cool.
I hope you pour your love into something else.
Yeah. So for super producer Mike Pilot and for Holly Frey, I'm Bryan Young, and the Force will be with you always.
Sir, if you'll not be meeting me, I'll close down for a while.